In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. "But it's an incredible find. There must be another way." Alex shook his head. "The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in." Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. "It has to," Alex replied, lighting the candles. "We don't have any other choice." Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. "Let's do this." As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. "Keep chanting!" Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. "Is it over?" Emily asked. "I think so," Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. "Thank you, Alex," she said, watching the flames. "We did it together," Alex replied. "Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again." In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked. "Better," Emily said with a smile. "I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over.
In a small town nestled among dense forests stood an old manor, its windows boarded up, and its once grand facade now crumbling. The townsfolk whispered tales of the mansion being haunted, with eerie lights seen flickering in the windows at night. A group of adventurous teenagers, led by Alex, decided to spend the night in the abandoned manor, hoping to debunk the supernatural rumors surrounding it. They arrived just as dusk settled, their excitement tinged with nervousness. As they ventured inside, the air grew colder and the silence thicker. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet as they explored the dimly lit rooms, each filled with dusty furniture covered in white sheets. Strange occurrences began to unfold. Doors slammed shut on their own, whispers echoed through the halls, and ghostly apparitions appeared fleetingly in the corners of their eyes. Alex remained determined to find a rational explanation, but doubt crept into their minds. As midnight approached, the supernatural presence in the manor grew stronger. The teenagers found themselves surrounded by swirling mists and ominous whispers, trapped in a nightmarish labyrinth where reality blurred with the paranormal. With their courage waning, the teenagers made a desperate attempt to escape the malevolent forces that held them captive. Racing through the maze-like corridors, they stumbled upon a hidden passage leading to freedom. As dawn broke, the teenagers emerged from the manor, shaken but alive. They vowed never to return to the cursed place, their encounter with the supernatural etched into their memories forever. 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lily, stood outside an old, abandoned house on a dare. The house was infamous in their town for being haunted, but they decided to spend the night there to prove their bravery. They pushed open the rusty gate and walked to the front door, which creaked loudly as they opened it. Inside, the house was dark and musty, with broken furniture and cobwebs everywhere. In the living room, they saw an old, dusty couch and a broken chandelier. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the room, making them shiver. They heard a faint whisper, but couldn't tell where it came from. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. They heard a strange scratching sound coming from one of the rooms. They opened the door to the room and saw a rocking chair moving on its own. The temperature dropped suddenly, and they saw the faint outline of a ghostly figure in the corner. The figure whispered, "Leave this place." Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, dusty furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure again, now clearer and more menacing. The ghost raised its hand, and the friends felt an icy wind pushing them towards the stairs. Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house, the door slamming shut behind them. They didn't stop running until they were far from the house. They vowed never to return, and to never speak of what they had seen. A group of 5 friends, Jack, Sarah, Mike, Emily, and Tom, stand in front of an old, abandoned house. The house is notorious in their town for being haunted. The friends are curious and decide to explore it. The friends push open the creaky front door. It swings open with a loud, eerie groan. Inside, the air is thick with dust, and the faint smell of decay lingers. The hallway is dimly lit, and shadows dance on the walls. They enter the living room, which is filled with old, decaying furniture. A broken chandelier hangs from the ceiling. Suddenly, they hear a faint whisper, but they can't make out the words. Everyone freezes, straining to listen. They find a door leading to the basement. Mike, the bravest of the group, decides to open it. The door creaks open, revealing a dark stairway. Cold air wafts up from the basement, sending shivers down their spines. They descend into the basement, using their phone flashlights to see. The basement is filled with old, rusted tools and broken furniture. Suddenly, Sarah screams as she sees a shadow move in the corner. They all point their lights towards it, but nothing is there. Emily finds an old dusty diary on a table. She opens it and begins to read aloud. The diary tells the story of a family who lived in the house long ago. It describes strange happenings and ends abruptly with a final desperate plea for help. As Emily reads the last words, the whispering voices return, louder and more distinct. The friends realize the whispers are saying, "Get out!" Panic sets in as the whispers grow into loud, angry shouts. Terrified, the friends rush back up the stairs, stumbling and pushing each other in their haste. They reach the front door, but it slams shut on its own. They struggle to open it as the whispers turn into deafening screams. Jack turns around and sees a ghostly figure at the end of the hallway. The figure is a woman in tattered clothes with hollow eyes. She raises a finger to her lips, signaling for silence, then vanishes. The front door suddenly flies open. The friends burst out of the house, gasping for breath. They don't stop running until they are far away from the house. They vow never to return and to warn others about the horrors inside. Weeks later, a new group of curious explorers stands in front of the same house, oblivious to the horrors that await them inside. On a cold, moonlit night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. The dense forest of Hollow Creek was known for its eerie legends. Sarah, a young journalist, drove through the fog-covered road, her headlights barely piercing the thick mist. She was here to investigate the mysterious disappearances that plagued the town. As she reached the edge of the forest, a grand, decaying mansion emerged from the fog. Sarah stepped inside the mansion, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. The air was cold and damp, and the smell of mold filled her nose. She walked through the grand foyer, noticing the decaying furniture and torn paintings. Her flashlight flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. Sarah's exploration led her to an old library. Shelves of dusty books lined the walls, and a grand fireplace dominated one side of the room. As she examined the books, she noticed one that seemed out of place. Pulling it out, a hidden door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow passageway. Sarah entered the hidden passage, her flashlight illuminating the narrow, claustrophobic space. The walls were lined with old, faded photographs and strange symbols. As she moved deeper, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The passage led to a small, hidden room, filled with old toys and a child's bed. In the hidden room, Sarah felt a sudden chill. She turned to see a ghostly figure of a young girl standing by the bed, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. The girl reached out to Sarah, whispering, "Help me." Before Sarah could react, the girl vanished, leaving a small antique locket on the bed. Sarah picked up the locket and opened it, revealing a photograph of the young girl and an inscription, "To my beloved daughter, Emily." Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah searched the mansion's records and discovered that Emily had disappeared decades ago. Her family had hidden a dark secret. Emily was not their only victim. As Sarah pieced together the tragic history, the spirits of the mansion grew restless. Shadows moved on their own, and ghostly whispers filled the air. Emily's spirit appeared again, this time leading Sarah to the basement. There she found the remains of Emily and other victims. The spirits demanded justice. Determined to set the spirits free, Sarah confronted the mansion's last living descendant, a reclusive old man. She forced him to confess to his family's crimes. As he admitted the truth, the spirits appeared, surrounding him. With a final, sorrowful wail, they dragged him into the shadows, vanishing forever. With the truth revealed and justice served, the mansion began to crumble. Sarah escaped just in time, watching from a distance as the once grand estate collapsed into ruins. The spirits of Hollow Creek were finally at peace, and the oppressive fog lifted, revealing a bright, clear sky.
Greystone Mansion had always been shrouded in mystery in the town of Pine Hill. On a cold, foggy evening, Sarah, an enthusiastic journalist, arrived to investigate the rumors of hauntings for her upcoming article. She parked her car near the gate, feeling a shiver of excitement mixed with dread. The mansion loomed large and foreboding in the mist. Sarah pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold, the air thick with dust. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decayed foyer. Her footsteps echoed ominously as she ventured deeper into the mansion, feeling a growing sense of unease. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. She turned and saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her questioning her sanity. Determined, she continued to the library, where she hoped to find records about the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of old, dusty books. As she searched through them, she heard whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Greystone. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse placed on the house. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular drew her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. She reached out, but the image disappeared. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books on a table. She found a journal detailing dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by its original owner, Lord Greystone. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Greystone appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Greystone Mansion. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Greystone's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." She knew the haunting was far from over. James, a middle-aged man who recently lost his job, receives an unexpected letter. It's an invitation to visit Willow Creek, a small town where his late grandmother owned an old, decrepit house. Intrigued and in need of a change, he decides to visit the house with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emma. "Why have we never heard of this place before?" Sarah asks, reading the letter again. James shrugs. "I guess it was forgotten, just like Grandma." Emma, excited by the idea of an adventure, chimes in, "I can't wait to see what it's like." The family arrives at Willow Creek after a long drive. The town is eerily quiet, with old, abandoned buildings lining the streets. They finally reach the house, which stands at the end of a narrow, overgrown road. The house is large, Gothic, and appears to have been untouched for decades. "This place is giving me the creeps," Sarah whispers, holding Emma's hand. James tries to reassure them. "It's just old. Let's see what's inside." Inside, the house is dark and filled with dust. The furniture is covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hang from the ceiling. As they explore, Emma finds an old diary in one of the bedrooms. "Look at this, Mom," Emma says, flipping through the pages. Sarah reads aloud. June 12th, 1923. "Strange noises keep me awake at night. I fear the spirits are restless." James frowns. "Spirits?" That night, the family tries to sleep, but strange noises echo through the house. Doors creak, and distant whispers can be heard. Emma wakes up in the middle of the night, feeling a cold breeze. She sees a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. "Dad, is that you?" she whispers, but the figure vanishes. Emma runs to her parents' room, terrified. "Mom, Dad, there's someone in my room!" The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the house. They discover that it was built by a wealthy family in the 1800s. But tragedy struck when the entire family mysteriously disappeared. "This place has a dark history," Sarah says, reading an old newspaper article. James nods. "We need to find out what happened." Emma adds, "Maybe the diary has more clues." Back at the house, James finds a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they discover a room filled with old photographs, letters, and strange symbols drawn on the walls. There's also a large locked chest. "These symbols look like some kind of ritual," Sarah says, tracing them with her finger. James tries to open the chest. "We need to find the key." Emma points to a photograph. "Look, that's the family that lived here." That night, the hauntings become more intense. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emma is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a figure standing at the end of the hallway watching them. "We need to leave now!" Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. James grabs the diary and starts reading the last entry. "We must complete the ritual to appease the spirits." Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual described in the diary. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. James reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emma hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, James!" Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, James completes the incantation and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the house feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell the authorities about this place," Sarah says, looking back at the house. James nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving Willow Creek behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emma finds the old diary on her bedside table, even though she left it in the house. Her heart races as she opens it, and a cold breeze fills the room. A whispering voice fills the air. "You cannot escape the past." Emma turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness. Blackwood Manor, a decrepit Victorian mansion, looms ominously amidst the dense forest. Boarded-up windows and crumbling facades tell tales of neglect and decay. The moon's pale light casts an eerie glow upon the scene, setting the stage for the horrors that lie within. The once manicured grounds of Blackwood Manor now lie in disarray, overrun by tangled bushes and fallen leaves. A thick fog rolls in from the surrounding forest, blanketing the landscape in an eerie haze, obscuring whatever secrets may be hidden within. The iron gates of Blackwood Manor, once grand and imposing, now stand tall and rusted, barely visible through the overgrowth that surrounds them. A chill wind howls through the trees, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that seems to seep into the very bones of those who dare to approach. Within Blackwood Manor, the foyer is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by flickering candlelight that casts long shadows upon the faded wallpaper. Dust dances in the air, stirred by a silence so palpable it feels almost suffocating, as if the very walls are holding their breath. In the dining room of Blackwood Manor, a long table is set with decaying remnants of a feast long past. Cobwebs hang from the ornate chandelier above, their delicate threads swaying in the stagnant air. The scent of decay hangs heavy, a grim reminder of the mansion's forgotten glory days. Within Blackwood Manor's library, dusty shelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet. The air is thick with the smell of aging paper and the secrets contained within the ancient tomes that line the walls. In the ballroom of Blackwood Manor, a grand chandelier hangs from the ceiling, its once glistening crystals now dull and lifeless. Moonlight filters through broken windows, casting eerie shadows upon the cracked dance floor. The room echoes with the ghostly laughter of revelries long past, a haunting reminder of the mansion's former glory. Within the study of Blackwood Manor, dusty books and forgotten artifacts clutter every available surface. A single candle flickers on the desk, its feeble light casting eerie shadows upon the walls. Ghostly figures seem to dance in the darkness, their presence felt but never seen, adding to the sense of unease that permeates the room. In the bedroom of Blackwood Manor, a canopy bed stands like a relic of a bygone era, its once luxurious linens now covered in dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper. The room is frozen in time, a silent witness to the horrors that haunt its halls. As dawn breaks over Blackwood Manor, the backyard is bathed in the soft light of a new day. The full extent of its decay is revealed in the morning light, as mist rises from the damp earth, shrouding the crumbling structures in an ethereal glow. The horrors of the night retreat with the darkness, but the memory of their presence lingers like a shadow upon the land.
On a moonless night, a car winds its way along a desolate road flanked by dense forest. Inside the car are four friends, Sam, Emily, Alex, and Lily, on their way to a remote cabin for a weekend getaway. The headlights cut through the darkness, casting long shadows on the trees. Eventually, they arrive at the remote cabin, a rustic wooden structure nestled among the trees. The air is still, and the only sound is the distant hoot of an owl. As they unpack their belongings, a sense of isolation settles over them, amplifying the feeling of unease. As night falls, the friends decide to explore the surrounding forest, eager for adventure. But as they venture deeper into the woods, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them. Strange symbols are etched into the trees, their meanings lost to time. Suddenly, a chill wind sweeps through the forest, carrying with it faint whispers that seem to echo through the trees. The friends stop in their tracks, their hearts pounding in their chests. The whispers grow louder, filling the air with an eerie chorus that sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, ghostly apparitions materialize among the trees, translucent figures with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ethereal forms glow faintly in the darkness, and their voices fill the air with haunting wails. The friends watch in horror as the spirits drift closer, their movements slow and deliberate. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the forest, their footsteps echoing through the darkness. Branches claw at their clothes, and roots trip them up as they race back to the safety of the cabin. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter with each step. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the cabin, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They lock the door behind them, their hearts still racing with fear. Inside the cabin, they huddle together, grateful for the safety of four walls and a roof.
Ravenswood Mansion loomed on the hill, surrounded by dense, dark woods. Its windows were dark, and the setting sun painted the sky with deep orange hues, casting eerie shadows across the land. Inside, the mansion's foyer was grand but covered in dust. A large, winding staircase led to the upper floors. An old chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals dull and dusty, hinting at the mansion's forgotten grandeur. The living room had a large fireplace with cold ashes, a dusty rug, and old furniture covered in white sheets. Faint light filtered through the broken windows, casting long shadows on the walls. The kitchen was in disrepair, with broken cabinets and rusted appliances. A large wooden table sat in the center, covered in cobwebs. The air was thick with the scent of decay and neglect. The dining room featured a long table with a dusty tablecloth and overturned chairs. The windows were boarded up, and the room was dimly lit by a single candle, casting flickering shadows on the walls. A grand staircase wound upward into darkness. The steps creaked underfoot, and the banister was thick with dust. A faint, eerie light glowed at the top of the stairs, beckoning yet foreboding. The master bedroom featured a large canopy bed covered in dust and cobwebs. The cracked windows allowed moonlight to filter through, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and adding to the room's eerie atmosphere. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sense of dread was palpable. A hidden room in the basement was filled with old books and strange artifacts. A large, cracked mirror reflected a distorted image, and a single candle flickered on a dusty desk, casting unsettling shadows. As dawn broke, Ravenswood Mansion was bathed in soft, golden light. The shadows receded, but the mansion still looked eerie and abandoned. Birds began to sing, but the air was still heavy with the night's terrors. In a secluded forest, shrouded in mist, lies an ancient mansion rumored to be haunted. A group of friends, Emma, Mark, and Sarah, venture into the forest one chilly evening, drawn by the allure of the mansion's dark history. As they approach the mansion, they are greeted by an imposing wrought iron gate, its hinges creaking ominously in the chilly night air. The mansion looms before them, its grandeur faded and its windows like empty eyes staring out into the darkness. Inside the mansion, the air is thick with dust and the sound of creaking floorboards echoes through the empty halls. The friends explore room after room, their footsteps muffled by faded carpets and their voices swallowed by the oppressive silence. As they delve deeper into the mansion, they uncover signs of its dark past. Forgotten rooms filled with cobweb-covered furniture, secret passages hidden behind crumbling walls, and faded portraits of long-dead residents whose eyes seem to follow their every move. As night falls and shadows deepen, the mansion comes alive with strange noises and eerie whispers. The friends feel a presence lurking in the darkness, unseen but unmistakably malevolent, its icy fingers brushing against their skin like the chill of a grave. In a desperate bid to escape the mansion's grasp, the friends race through its labyrinthine halls, their hearts pounding and their breath coming in ragged gasps. But the mansion seems to have other plans, its corridors shifting and changing before their eyes, trapping them in a nightmarish maze from which there may be no escape. Cornered in the mansion's dark heart, the friends confront the malevolent force that has plagued them since their arrival. With a final desperate act of defiance, they banish the entity back into the shadows from whence it came, freeing themselves from its grasp and escaping into the night. On a cold, misty evening, four friends, Alice, Mark, Sarah, and James, stand before Blackwood House, an old mansion with a dark history. Mark, the brave one, dares everyone to spend the night inside. Despite their fear, they accept the challenge, eager to prove their courage. The iron gate creaks as they push it open and step onto the overgrown path. The front door groans loudly as they push it open, revealing a dark and dusty foyer. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling and the air smells of mold. They switch on their flashlights, revealing old furniture covered in white sheets. As they step inside, the door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They move into the living room, where a grand piano sits covered in dust. The wallpaper is peeling, and antique furniture is draped with sheets. Alice notices a photo on the mantelpiece, a family portrait with the eyes scratched out. She feels a chill and steps back, bumping into Sarah. A soft whisper echoes through the room, sending shivers down their spines. "Did you hear that?" James asks, his voice trembling. They listen intently, but the whispering stops. Mark tries to laugh it off, but the fear in his eyes betrays him. They decide to explore further. In the kitchen, they find rusted appliances and broken dishes scattered on the floor. The air is colder here. Sarah opens a cupboard, and a pair of glowing red eyes stare back at her. She screams, and the eyes disappear. The cupboard door slams shut on its own, and they all back away, terrified. They find a door leading to the basement. James suggests going down, but Alice hesitates. The others convince her, and they slowly descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old, dusty furniture and strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Get out." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally breaking it open and escaping into the night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, gasping for breath. The mansion looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety as they walk away. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the glowing red eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memory of that night stays with them, a constant reminder of the terror they faced. On a cold, windy night, four friends, John, Sarah, Mike, and Emily, arrive at an old abandoned house at the edge of town. They are curious about the rumors that the house is haunted and decide to explore. They push open the creaky front door and step inside. The air is cold and musty, the wooden floorboards creak under their feet, and they use their flashlights to see. In the living room, they find an old tattered couch and a dusty coffee table. On the wall, there is a large cracked mirror. Suddenly, they hear a whispering sound, but no one is there. They decide to explore upstairs. The staircase creaks loudly as they climb. The hallway is long and dark, with several closed doors. A cold breeze seems to come from nowhere, making them shiver. They open one of the doors and find a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air is even colder here. Suddenly, a toy car moves on its own, and they hear a child's laughter. Frightened, they rush downstairs and find a door leading to the basement. They open it and descend into the darkness. The basement is damp and cold, with a feeling of dread in the air. In the basement, they find an old trunk. When they open it, a ghostly figure of a woman appears, her face twisted in sadness. She reaches out towards them, and they feel an icy chill. Terrified, they run up the stairs and out of the house. The door slams shut behind them, and they can still hear the whispers and laughter. They vow never to return.
In the heart of a dense forest stands an old mansion, its once grand facade now crumbling and overgrown with ivy. Four friends, Tom, Sarah, Emily, and Jake, arrive at the mansion one foggy evening, drawn by rumors of its haunting. The air is heavy with anticipation as they approach the imposing structure. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the mansion's entryway. Cobwebs cling to the ceiling, and dust dances in the beams of their flashlights. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding as they take their first steps into the abandoned mansion. Inside the mansion, they encounter a labyrinth of hallways lined with closed doors. Each room they enter is filled with decaying remnants of the past, broken furniture, faded paintings, and tattered curtains. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and the air is heavy with the scent of decay. As they delve deeper into the mansion, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an unsettling chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings glide through the air, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the mansion with a chilling aura. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the mist begins to dissipate, they share a silent vow never to return to the mansion's shadowed halls. Julia and her husband, Mark, move into an old Victorian house in a small town. The house is beautiful, but has been vacant for years. As they unpack, Julia finds an old dusty mirror in the attic. She decides to clean it and hang it in their bedroom. That night, Julia wakes up to strange sounds, whispering and soft footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. However, when she looks into the mirror, she briefly sees a shadowy figure behind her before it vanishes. Disturbed by the experience, Julia visits the local library to research the house's history. She learns that a woman named Elizabeth lived there a century ago and mysteriously disappeared. Locals believe her spirit haunts the house. Julia becomes convinced that the mirror is connected to Elizabeth. That night, she sees Elizabeth's ghost in the mirror again. This time, the ghost seems to be trying to communicate, mouthing the words, "Help me." Julia tells Mark about her experiences. Skeptical but wanting to support her, Mark suggests they consult a paranormal expert. The expert tells them that Elizabeth's spirit is trapped and needs help to find peace. The expert instructs them to perform a ritual to release Elizabeth's spirit. They set up candles and the mirror in the living room. Julia reads a passage provided by the expert. The room grows cold, and Elizabeth's spirit appears. Elizabeth's spirit reveals that she was murdered by her jealous husband and her body hidden in the basement. Julia and Mark are horrified but determined to give Elizabeth justice. They find her remains in the basement, just as she described. They call the police, who properly lay Elizabeth's remains to rest. Afterward, the house feels lighter and the strange occurrences stop. Julia looks at the mirror one last time and sees Elizabeth smiling peacefully before fading away. Months later, Julia and Mark have settled into their now peaceful home. They keep the mirror as a reminder of Elizabeth and the mystery they solved together. Life returns to normal, but they never forget the ghostly presence that once haunted their home.
The old house stood at the end of the lonely street, its windows shattered and its wooden walls weathered by time. Sarah had heard stories about the house since she was a child. It was said to be haunted, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the air was thick with dread. Determined to prove it was all just a myth, she decided to spend the night there. As Sarah pushed open the creaking door, the musty smell of decay hit her. The interior was dark, with only the faintest light filtering through the grimy windows. She stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under her weight. Every corner seemed to be alive with whispers, just out of reach. Sarah moved cautiously into the living room. The furniture was covered in dust and cobwebs draped from the ceiling. An old grandfather clock stood against the wall, its hands frozen at midnight. As she looked around, she heard a faint whispering, like someone speaking from the shadows. On the wall hung a portrait of a stern-looking man. His eyes seemed to follow Sarah as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine. The whispers grew louder, and for a moment, she thought she saw the man's eyes blink. She stepped back in fear, her heart racing. Sarah found herself drawn to a door partially hidden behind a tattered curtain. She hesitated before pulling it open, revealing a set of stairs leading down into the darkness. The whispers were clearer now, urging her to descend. With trembling hands, she held her flashlight and began her descent. The basement was cold and damp, the walls lined with old shelves holding dusty jars and forgotten relics. The whispers were louder here, almost tangible. Sarah felt a presence behind her and spun around but saw nothing. Suddenly, an old radio crackled to life, playing a haunting lullaby. Sarah's flashlight flickered and died. In the darkness, she felt something brush against her arm. She backed away, stumbling over an old trunk. The whispers were deafening now. She managed to open the trunk, revealing an old diary. The pages told the story of a man who had lost his family and descended into madness, cursing the house and anyone who entered. Realizing the danger, Sarah grabbed the diary and rushed up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, the whispers turning into screams. Doors slammed shut around her, and the air grew colder. She reached the front door and burst out into the night, the whispers fading behind her. Outside, Sarah collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the house, now silent and still. She knew she could never explain what happened, but she had the diary as proof. As she walked away, she heard one last whisper in the wind, promising that the shadows would always be watching. An old abandoned cabin stands alone in the heart of a dense forest. The wooden walls are rotting, and the windows are broken, giving the place a forlorn look. Tall, menacing trees surround the cabin, their long shadows stretching as the sun begins to set. Inside the cabin, the living room is a relic of the past, covered in dust and cobwebs. An old moth-eaten sofa sits in the center of the room, facing a fireplace with burnt logs. A single lantern flickers, casting eerie shadows on the walls, hinting at the secrets the cabin holds. The kitchen is in complete disrepair, with broken cabinets and rusted appliances. Moonlight filters through a cracked window, casting a pale glow on an old blood-stained knife lying on the counter. The air is thick with the scent of decay and forgotten memories. A narrow path winds through the dark forest, with twisted tree branches reaching out like skeletal hands. The ground is littered with fallen leaves, and an eerie mist rises from the forest floor, adding to the sense of unease that hangs in the air. In a clearing deep within the forest, the full moon illuminates an ancient stone altar. The altar is covered in moss and vines, and strange symbols are carved into the stone, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air is thick with an otherworldly presence, making the skin crawl. A dark, fast-flowing river cuts through the forest, its black waters reflecting the moonlight. A rickety wooden bridge spans the river, creaking ominously with each gust of wind. The sound of the rushing water adds to the sense of isolation and dread. The basement of the cabin is dark and damp, with stone walls covered in moss. Rusted chains hang from the ceiling, swaying slightly in the draft. The floor is littered with broken bottles and old bones, remnants of a sinister past. A hidden room in the basement, revealed by a secret door, is filled with ancient books and strange artifacts. A large, dusty mirror dominates the room, reflecting an eerie glow. The air is thick with the scent of old parchment and something darker, more malevolent. As dawn breaks, the edge of the forest is bathed in a soft, golden light. The shadows recede, revealing the cabin in the distance. Birds begin to sing, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting, but the haunting memories of the night linger. In the morning light, the abandoned cabin appears less menacing, but still forlorn. The broken windows and overgrown yard are clearly visible, and a sense of unease still lingers in the air. The events of the night have left their mark, a reminder that some secrets are best left undisturbed. Blackwood Manor stood isolated at the edge of a dense forest, its Gothic architecture looming ominously against the darkening sky. Emily, a young journalist, arrived to investigate the mysterious disappearances that had plagued the manor for decades. Determined to uncover the truth, she parked her car and approached the grand, yet decaying front doors. As Emily stepped inside, the door creaked loudly, echoing through the vast, dimly lit hall. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed by her presence. The air was cold and an unsettling silence enveloped her. She turned on her flashlight, illuminating the grand staircase and the darkened corners of the hall. Emily walked into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. A large fireplace dominated one wall, with an ornate mirror hanging above it. She felt a chill as she noticed a faint figure reflected in the mirror. But when she turned, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old grandfather clock. Emily found a long hallway lined with portraits of the Blackwood family. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her as she walked. One portrait, in particular, caught her attention. A stern-looking woman with piercing eyes. Suddenly, Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder. But when she turned around, there was no one there. The library was filled with ancient books and heavy wooden furniture. Emily felt drawn to an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she found entries detailing strange rituals and dark secrets of the Blackwood family. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and the whispers of unseen figures filled the air. Emily discovered a hidden door leading to the basement. As she descended the creaking stairs, the air grew colder and the darkness thicker. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. She heard distant, echoing whispers and the faint sound of footsteps following her. At the bottom of the stairs, Emily found a room filled with strange symbols and an altar. The air was thick with the scent of incense and decay. She realized this was where the Blackwood family had conducted their dark rituals. As she explored, she heard a low, menacing chant and felt an oppressive presence closing in on her. Emily's flashlight died, plunging her into darkness. The chanting grew louder, and ghostly figures emerged from the shadows. She felt a cold hand grip her arm, pulling her towards the altar. Summoning her courage, she broke free and ran up the stairs, the spirit's wails echoing behind her. Emily burst out of Blackwood Manor, gasping for breath. The night was still and silent, a stark contrast to the horrors inside. Clutching the journal, she vowed to expose the truth about the Blackwood family. As she walked away, she glanced back one last time, seeing the faint outline of a figure watching her from an upstairs window.
Sophie arrived at Briarwood Manor, a sprawling estate she inherited from her great-uncle. The mansion stood alone on a hill, surrounded by gnarled trees and thick fog. As she approached, the gate creaked open on its own, setting her nerves on edge. She hesitated but walked through, determined to uncover the secrets of her inheritance. Sophie stepped inside the manor, greeted by a grand but dusty foyer. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. As she moved further in, the front door slammed shut behind her with a loud bang. Startled, she spun around, but no one was there. The only light came from her flickering flashlight. In the living room, old furniture was covered in white sheets. An antique clock ticked loudly, breaking the silence. Sophie noticed a photograph on the mantelpiece, showing her great-uncle with an unknown woman. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Sophie walked down a hallway lined with portraits of her ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her every move. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. As she continued, she heard a whisper, almost as if someone was calling her name. She froze, heart pounding. In the library, Sophie found shelves filled with dusty old books. One book in particular caught her eye, an old journal. As she read through it, she discovered it belonged to her great-uncle, detailing strange events and encounters with a dark presence. The room grew colder, and she felt like she was being watched. Behind a bookshelf, Sophie discovered a hidden door. She hesitated but felt compelled to open it. The door revealed a dark, narrow staircase leading down. Holding her flashlight, she descended, each step echoing in the silence. The air grew damp and cold. The basement was filled with old furniture and strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center stood an altar with black candles and an old book. As Sophie approached, the candles flickered to life, casting an eerie glow. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she heard distant whispers. Sophie's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of the unknown woman from the photograph, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help me," the figure whispered. Terrified, Sophie ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with shadows moving and doors slamming. She burst through the front door into the foggy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. She looked back once more, vowing never to return. Breathing heavily, Sophie glanced back at the manor as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of the unknown woman watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
Blackwood House stood isolated in the dense forest. Its windows were broken and the walls were cracked. As dusk set in, the sky turned an eerie orange and purple, casting a sinister glow on the decaying structure. Inside the house, the foyer was dark and filled with dust and cobwebs. An old creaky staircase led up to the second floor, and a broken chandelier hung from the ceiling, its crystals missing or shattered. The living room was filled with tattered furniture and a cold fireplace. A broken window let in a sliver of moonlight, illuminating the peeling wallpaper and the thick layer of dust that covered everything. The kitchen was a mess of broken cabinets and rusty appliances. A large wooden table in the center was covered in dust and cobwebs, and an old broken stove stood in the corner, untouched for years. The dining room featured a long table with an old tattered tablecloth. The chairs were scattered and overturned, and a single dusty candle sat at the center of the table, unlit and forgotten. The hallway was long and dark, with old creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper. Closed doors lined the hallway, each marked with a different ominous symbol, hinting at the secrets hidden within. The bedroom was dusty and old, with a large canopy bed covered in cobwebs. The curtains were tattered, and moonlight streamed in through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The attic was filled with old, forgotten items covered in dust and cobwebs. A single small window let in a beam of moonlight, illuminating strange old toys scattered on the floor. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The basement was dark and damp, with stone walls and a dirt floor. Old rusty chains hung from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. The sense of dread was palpable, as if the walls themselves whispered secrets. As dawn broke, Blackwood House was bathed in a soft golden light. The forest around it remained dark, but the first rays of the sun illuminated the decaying structure. The night's terror faded, but the house's haunting presence remained, a testament to its cursed history. On a chilly autumn evening, four friends, Emily, Jack, Olivia, and Michael, gather around a campfire near Willow Creek. They share ghost stories and dare each other to spend the night at the old abandoned house on the hill. Despite their fear, curiosity wins and they decide to go. The friends arrive at the old house, its silhouette looming against the night sky. The house is in disrepair, with broken windows and ivy creeping up the walls. Jack pushes open the rusty gate, and they walk up the overgrown path to the front door, which creaks loudly as they enter. Inside, the house is dark and cold. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and dust covers the furniture. They switch on their flashlights, revealing faded wallpaper and broken picture frames. As they step further inside, the front door slams shut behind them, making them jump. They enter the living room, where an old grand piano sits covered in dust. Emily notices a family portrait on the wall, the face is scratched out. Suddenly, the piano keys play a haunting tune on their own. The friends back away, their hearts pounding. They move to the kitchen where rusted appliances and broken dishes are scattered. The air is colder here. Olivia opens a cupboard and a pair of ghostly eyes stare back at her. She screams and the cupboard door slams shut on its own. The friends huddle together, terrified. They find a door leading to the basement. Michael suggests going down, but Emily hesitates. The others convince her, and they descend the creaky wooden stairs. The basement is pitch dark and damp. Their flashlights reveal old furniture and strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they find an old table with a Ouija board. Suddenly, the planchette moves on its own, spelling out, "Leave now." A low growl echoes through the room, and they see a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Panicked, they rush back up the stairs, tripping over each other in their haste. Desperate to leave, they race towards the front door. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and ghostly wails echoing through the halls. They struggle to open the front door, finally breaking it open and escaping into the night. The house falls silent behind them. Outside, they collapse onto the grass, gasping for breath. The house looms dark and silent behind them. They vow never to return, each one haunted by the night's events. The night is cold, but they feel a sense of relief and safety as they walk away. Back at their homes, they try to return to normal life. But each night, they are haunted by nightmares of the glowing red eyes and the whispers in the dark. The memory of that night stays with them, a constant reminder of the terror they faced. In a tranquil forest clearing, the dying light of day casts long shadows over the lush greenery. At the center of the clearing looms a rustic cabin, its weathered facade hinting at secrets hidden within. Inside the cabin, the living room is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by the feeble glow of a single lamp. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, and worn-out furniture sits silent and still. Dust dances in the air, stirred by an unseen presence that lingers in the shadows. Outside, the forest clearing is bathed in the ethereal glow of moonlight, casting a haunting pall over the landscape. Ominous clouds gather overhead, and the trees sway in the wind, their branches casting eerie shadows that seem to dance in the darkness. In the kitchen, neglect hangs heavy in the air, with peeling paint and cobwebs clinging to every surface. Moonlight filters through grimy windows, casting twisted shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the dusty countertops and rusted appliances. Along a winding forest path, darkness reigns supreme, with gnarled trees looming overhead like silent sentinels. The path disappears into the blackness, its destination unknown and foreboding, daring any who venture forth to tread carefully. In the bedroom, the air is musty and thick with the scent of decay. A creaky bed sits silent and still, its threadbare curtains fluttering in the breeze. Moonlight filters through cracks in the walls, casting eerie patterns that dance upon the worn floorboards like specters in the night. As night falls, a raging storm descends upon the forest clearing, with lightning illuminating the sky in blinding flashes and thunder rumbling like the roar of a distant beast. The wind howls through the trees, whipping up leaves and debris in a frenzied dance of chaos and despair. Deep within the bowels of the cabin lies the basement, a dark and foreboding chamber filled with crumbling walls and rusty pipes. Moonlight filters weakly through a small window, casting a feeble glow over the mold-covered floor, illuminating the dank and musty air with its eerie light. As dawn breaks, the forest clearing is bathed in the soft light of a new day, with birds chirping and dew glistening on the leaves like scattered diamonds. The storm has passed, leaving behind a sense of calm and renewal that belies the horrors that lurk within the haunted cabin. In the cabin's living room, morning sunlight streams through the windows, banishing the shadows and illuminating the space with its warm embrace. Dust motes dance lazily in the air, and the oppressive atmosphere of the night has lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and serenity that signals the dawn of a new day. In a small town surrounded by dense woods, a group of friends receives an intriguing invitation to spend a weekend at a remote cabin nestled deep within the shadowed woods. Excited for an adventure, they eagerly accept the invitation, brushing off the warnings of locals who speak of strange happenings in the woods. Ignoring the growing sense of unease, they set off into the wilderness. As the friends arrive at the cabin, they are struck by its isolation, the nearest neighbor miles away, and the woods enveloping it like a fortress. Despite the tranquil surroundings, a feeling of foreboding settles over them as they step inside. The air is heavy with the scent of pine, and the only sound is the whispering of the wind through the trees. As night falls, the friends gather around a crackling fire, their laughter echoing through the stillness of the woods. But as the fire dies down, a chill descends, and strange noises begin to emanate from the darkness beyond. The friends exchange nervous glances, their senses on high alert as they listen to the eerie sounds of the night. While exploring the cabin, one of the friends stumbles upon a mysterious artifact, a weathered journal bound in leather. Intrigued, they begin to read, uncovering the journal's secrets, a tale of madness and obsession, of a previous occupant driven to madness by the shadows that lurk within the woods. As they read on, the sense of dread that hangs over the cabin intensifies. As night deepens, the friends begin to notice strange shadows moving among the trees. A flicker of movement in the corner of their eye, a rustling in the underbrush that seems to follow their every step. They try to brush it off as their imagination, but the shadows grow bolder, creeping closer and closer to the cabin. As the night wears on, the friends find themselves ensnared in a nightmare from which there seems to be no escape. The shadows grow thicker, wrapping themselves around the cabin like a cloak of darkness. They hear whispered voices in the night, their words unintelligible but undeniably menacing. Panic sets in as they realize they are not alone in the woods. With their backs against the wall, the friends make a final stand against the encroaching darkness. Armed with whatever weapons they can find, they venture out into the night, determined to confront the source of the shadows once and for all. With hearts pounding and adrenaline coursing through their veins, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon, the shadows begin to retreat, their grip on the forest loosening with each passing moment. The friends emerge from the darkness, battered and bruised but alive, though the horrors of the night will haunt them forever. They take solace in the knowledge that they've survived the darkness of the shadowed woods.
On a dark, stormy night, 4 friends, Tom, Sarah, Mike, and Emma, stood at the gates of Blackwood Manor. The old house was rumored to be haunted, but they were determined to spend the night there as a dare. They pushed open the heavy front door, which groaned loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture covered in white sheets and cobwebs in every corner made the place look abandoned and eerie. In the living room, they saw a grand piano in the corner and a large broken chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, causing everyone to jump in fright. They decided to explore the upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver, and they heard faint whispering. They opened one door and found a room filled with old, dusty toys. The air was freezing, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving by itself. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, broken furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She stared at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying, and agreed to never speak of it again. On a dark, windy night, 4 friends, Tom, Alice, Sam, and Lucy, stood at the entrance of an old abandoned mansion on Hollow Hill. They were dared to spend the night inside the house, which was rumored to be haunted. They pushed open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the house was dark and filled with dust. Old furniture was covered in white sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. They entered the living room, where an old dusty couch sat under a large broken window. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys covered in dust. Suddenly, the piano played a single eerie note, making them jump. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with each step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. A cold breeze made them shiver as they heard a faint whispering sound. They opened one of the doors and found a room with old children's toys scattered on the floor. The air was freezing, and the rocking chair in the corner started to move on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing around them. Panicked, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was colder and darker, with a damp smell. They found strange symbols on the walls. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She looked at them with hollow eyes and whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Hollow Hill. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed to never speak of it again. As dusk settles over the sleepy town, a car pulls up to the edge of Willow Lake, its waters shrouded in mist. Inside are 4 friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Max, seeking a weekend getaway at a lakeside cabin. The air is cool and still, and the only sound is the gentle lapping of water against the shore. The friends arrive at the lakeside cabin, a rustic wooden structure perched on the edge of the water. The moonlight reflects off the lake's surface, casting a shimmering path to the cabin's door. Excitement fills the air as they unload their belongings, eager to relax and unwind in the secluded setting. As night falls, the friends gather around a crackling fire outside the cabin, sharing stories and laughter. But as the hour grows late, a chill wind sweeps in from the lake, and a sense of unease settles over the group. Shadows dance among the trees, and the distant sound of a loon's call sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a thick fog rolls in from the lake, engulfing the cabin in a blanket of white. Visibility drops to almost nothing, and the friends find themselves disoriented and afraid. Strange shapes loom in the mist, and the sound of footsteps echoes through the fog. As the fog thickens, the friends begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the darkness itself. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to make sense of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize in the fog, a spectral procession of ethereal beings with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ghostly forms glide through the mist, their movements graceful yet haunting. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the night with dread. With a collective cry, the friends turn and flee from the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the thick fog, branches clawing at their skin and roots tripping them up. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the fog, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the shore of Willow Lake, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the mist, they share a solemn vow never to return to the haunted cabin by the lake.